Alright, we've got PJ Holberg here, and before we go any further, I'd like to point out something that he's doing very well. This is something that RA Dickey talked a lot about during our clinic together in late 2018. In fact, this is one of RA Dickey's checkpoints, a critical checkpoint that he used to win the Cy Young in 2012. As you can see, PJ is doing a really good job of keeping his weight back. And when he gets to front foot strike, his chin is well behind the heel of his landing foot. This allows his upper body to continue to move up and over his front leg. This allows him to hold on to the ball longer, which gives him more control over the knuckleball. Let's slow down an example right here. Let's watch as PJ gets into front foot strike. As you're about to see, his head is well behind his front foot at front foot strike. This is going to give his arm plenty of time to manipulate the ball as it moves forward. Here you can see PJ doing a great job of stiffening up his front leg, which catapults his arm and chest forward. Now, if you land with your chin directly over your front foot, then you have nowhere to go. You'll miss out on all this incredible range of motion, which will make throwing a professional quality knuckleball very difficult. Look how much space his arm and chest has to maneuver as he delivers the ball forward. PJ tells me his knuckleballs spin forward, and it's easy to see why. As you can see from the profile of his delivery, his arm does a great job of beating his chest to the plate. This is another checkpoint that RA Dickey talked a lot about during our clinic together in late 2018. RA talked about how he needed to see his grip out of his peripheral vision at release point, which is another way of saying that your arm needs to beat your chest to the plate. And you can see PJ doing that very well in this delivery right here. In fact, you can see his release point is well out in front of his front foot. You simply cannot get on top of the ball if your arm does not beat your chest, like it does here with PJ. Now it's time to move on to something that he can do better. In this clip here of Roger Clemens, take a look at his back leg. I realize that Clemens is not a knuckleball pitcher, but this video is the best example of a strong back leg that I can find on the internet. Watch how his back knee stays over his foot as long as possible, before slamming down towards the ground at the last moment. The movement of your back knee is the very first movement of the kinetic chain. Essentially, it starts the entire kinetic chain up your body. And controlling your back knee can connect you to the ground while making your knuckleball incredibly consistent. So let's compare the strong back leg of Clemens to PJ's back leg here in his profile view. If we pause right before front foot strike, you can see that his leg is basically straight. If we draw a line from the wing of his back hip to the ball of his right foot, you can see that his leg is straight on this line. A strong back leg would have the knee externally rotated outside of this line. This puts the knee into a very uncomfortable position. You'll feel a lot of torque on the ligaments, and that's essentially the ground energy that you're holding back. Releasing this ground energy by turning your knee inwards starts the kinetic chain. And having your leg in a strong position with an externally rotated knee gives your knee plenty of space to rotate down towards the ground, which then fires your hips towards the target, and then your spine unravels one vertebrae at a time. This is hip to shoulder separation, which catapults your shoulder forward towards the plate, and eventually, and lastly, the ball goes towards the plate. By mastering this back knee, you can hold the ground energy back and initiate the kinetic chain when you want to. And this guarantees that the kinetic chain is unbroken all the way through the delivery, which increases your chances of throwing a professional quality knuckleball. Let's take another look at Clemens' strong back leg. Let's draw that same straight line from his back hip to the ball of his right foot. As you can see, his knee is an incredibly strong position. It is externally rotated outside of this straight line, which gives it plenty of room to slam down towards the ground, which begins the kinetic chain. This fires off a cascade of events. Eventually the hip turns rather violently, and when the hip turns, the spine turns one vertebrae at a time. This fires the shoulders towards the plate, and eventually, and lastly, the ball fires towards the plate. And you'll be able to see this unravel in super slow motion right here. His knee rotates rather violently downwards towards the ground. That's the first movement in the kinetic chain. Now his hips fire. His back hip fires towards the plate, his spine rotates around, his shoulders fire, and finally the ball comes through. Now Clemens has maximized the kinetic chain for velocity. We don't need to do that as knuckleballers, but we do need to be under control of the kinetic chain at all times. It's the only way for you to get the ground energy through the ball and throw a knuckleball consistently. Your knuckleball's inconsistency might have something to do with that back leg. Once that knee dips inside that line, the kinetic chain starts. And if the kinetic chain accidentally starts too early, the knuckleball will completely collapse. So sit into that delivery a little more, externally rotate that back leg, and learn to connect the rotation of that back knee to your pitch. Unless you have some serious mobility, once that back knee dips inside that line, the kinetic chain fires and there's no going back. If it fires too early, you're going to have to try to stop the kinetic chain and then restart it to throw a quality knuckleball. This puts undue strain on your hips and your shoulders. It also makes the knuckleball wildly inconsistent. Let's move on to two more adjustments and change camera angles. From this angle, it's apparent that you're opening up just a little bit. You're opening up just a few inches with your front foot, which is causing another issue. Let's freeze frame a delivery. And let's draw a straight line from the ball of your back foot to the target. Now you want your front foot to land on this line, or 1 to 6 inches closed. By opening up, you are getting your energy going a little bit towards the left-handed batter's box. It also lines your shoulders up a little bit with the left-handed batter's box, which will cause an equal and opposite reaction. The ball will likely fire up and in at the right-handed batter. You can see this reaction here in super slow motion. But here's where opening up becomes a larger issue. It causes you to spin off of the target. As you can see, your chest followed your front leg and is now opened up towards the left-handed batter. We want to open up like a door and square up to the plate upon release to stay down the hallway. This is one of RA Dickey's checkpoints, and you can see him working on it right here. He lands his front foot a little closed, and he opens up like a door to square up to the hitter. This allows him to land incredibly balanced and in a defensive position, but it also gives you great balance throughout your entire delivery to throw consistent knuckleballs. For you, achieving this balance is twofold. You'll need to land your front foot a little bit more closed, and then you'll have to imagine that your chin is on a track. You can even use that white line on the carpet below you. Put your chin on that track and do not deviate through the entire delivery. This will put your head in a good position, keep your spine balanced, and will allow you to open up like a door so you'll square up to the hitter upon release. As you can see right now, your chin is following your front foot and drifting toward the left-handed hitter. And to add to this idea of balance, pretend like you have a small Dixie cup of water on your head. Keep that water balanced and do not spill it throughout the entire delivery. Whoa, it just looked like you realized that you spun off right there. You tried to correct yourself after the pitch. Well, I hope that was instructive. Feel free to send me any more questions and keep working. Don't let it spin.